Now, we just went from the chemical name to the chemical formula. What if you're given the chemical formula and you have to figure out the chemical name? So let's take a look at how we go about naming that. From chemical symbols, chemical formula, to the name. You again match the element symbol with the name, so figure out what the symbol and the name are. You then identify to see if there are any variable charge metals. If there are any variable charge metals, then you're going to have to include that Roman numeral with the parentheses. See if anything was simplified. And if there's anything simplified, then you might need to unsimplify that, because when we name it in its unsimplified form. We then crisscross backwards. Just now we crisscross forwards. When we go from symbol to name, we have to go the other way. So we have to crisscross backwards. And then when you name it, again, you name your metal first and you name your non-metal second. Your non-metal, you always end it with an IDE. So you have to take off the end of that non-metal's name and replace it with "ide." Let's take a look at this chemical formula of NiO. So we first match the element symbol with the element name. Ni is a nickel, oxygen is O. We identify any variable charge metals. We see that nickel is a transition metal. Nickel is not one of the 3 exceptions of aluminum, silver, or zinc, so we know that it's a variable charge metal. Oxygen is in group 6. It has a fixed charge of -2, -2, it's an anion. So we label that first. We then see if anything was simplified. Well, if you take a look here, your fixed oxygen has a charge of -2. But here, after it crisscrossed, there doesn't seem to be any 2's in its subscript. So because there are no 2's, we could definitely know that something was simplified along the lines. So to start off, we know that nickel could have 2 different charges. And because this one seems to be the simplest form of 1 and 1, then it means if the oxygen had a charge of -2, then probably nickel had a charge of +2. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been able to cancel that out, right? So see how the final chemical formula was simplified? So we could start off by assuming that maybe nickel has a subscript of a 2. We then crisscross backwards. We then write our nickel and our oxygen chemical symbols, and we move from the subscript to the superscript. Just now we went from the superscript to the subscript. Now we're going from the bottom up. Similarly, we crisscross for the oxygen as well, and we move it up. Metals always have a positive charge because it likes to lose electrons. It's reactive. Non-metals always like to gain electrons, so it's always going to be negatively charged. So just by looking at this, we could tell the name of it. We have nickel, which is a transition metal. It has a 2+ charge. So here we would name it as nickel with a parentheses of 2 to show that this one is a +2 nickel. It's not a +3 or a +1 or any other form of nickel. And the oxygen, we replace the ending, the suffix, with an "ide." So oxygen becomes an oxide. So the final chemical name for this chemical formula is nickel 2 oxide.